Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to stay seated. I'm just here to introduce this man. My name is Paul Doherty. I'm a filmmaker and arguably a video game historian. It has been my great privilege to make a film called Heart of Neon about the life of one of the longest-standing independent video game developers in the world, Jeff Minter. Thank you. So you're going to tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what I want to do is give a little bit of background context as to like the differences between the US software scene and the UK software scene. I mean, a lot of people over here have probably only really heard of me for like Tempest 2000, but in Europe there was a different scene, and I've got quite a body of work over there. And so I want to just give you an introduction to who I am, why there should be a documentary made about me or a collection of my games out there. You might not have heard of some of this stuff, so anyway, let's go. So yeah, exactly. Who is this bloke anyway? Start with that. So, obviously, I've done lots of really important things in the game business. That's why I'm here, you know, I'm super important. I got old, and I've been stubborn, and I just keep doing it. I haven't decided to become a manager or anything. I just like making games, and I've been doing it for 40 years odd now. So yeah, I'm old. I was doing a bit of research, and apparently I'm pretty much the same age as video games. Although I'm not as old as that one. That one's actually a bit older than me by 3 or 4 years, I think. This is the computer tennis game. It was created in 1959. But it's not really made of code. It's made of electronic components, and it's not really what we would think of as an arcade game running on a programmable computer. Use an analog computer. But Space War, now that is recognisably a video game. Look, you see, there's nerds there. They've got joysticks, and they're playing what is recognisably a two-player space game. It's running on a PDP-1, a digital computer, so proper computer running code, actual nerds, actual controllers. The release date was, well, when it was first shown in public was April the 28th to the 29th in 1962. So I think we can call that a release date. That's the first time that people outside of their group would have seen a video game. The same points, yeah. And the system is extremely expensive. When you couldn't buy one of these machines and take it home, you know, have a PDP-1 in your room. But it was playable, complete, open to the public. We'll call that the first ever released video game. So that was released on the 28th of April 1962, and I was released on the 22nd of April 1962. Therefore, I'm 6 days older than video games. 16 years later, I was in sixth form college, which is the equivalent of, I guess, the last 2 years of high school. And video games were starting to become generally available. And I liked them. Of course I liked them. You know, I was a 16-year-old kid. Of course I liked them.
What do you think the first one you saw was?
First one I'd seen Pong, of course. But the first sort of proper arcade game I saw was probably Space Invaders. Remember there was a travelling fair came to our little village, and I'd heard about this game that was using up all the quarters in Japan, all the however many yen coins it was in Japan, and I thought I'd have a go. I still remember I got like 470 points on my first go. And it was like, yeah, okay, I'm into this. But I mean, there was no sense of these games being anything that I could ever make or get into. The thought didn't even cross my mind. They were just things that were made, somewhere, in some way. I didn't know how they worked. They might as well have just been made by wizards, you know, in their wizard's lair. And the school I went to, computer education was basically non-existent. There wasn't anything. You know, I mean, we didn't have any computers in school. We had lessons taught on those sorts of things, like a mechanical adding machine with a crank on the side and typewriters. And even calculators were only just coming in, just about being allowed by the time I left school. And I knew nothing at all about computers. I had no interest in them, really. I didn't connect them to video games in any way. this is what I thought they were, you know, these things that sent you a gas bill or whatever. Basically boring, yeah. Then one day, I was at sixth form college and I happened to go into the wrong room and I saw one of these. And it was like, you know, what's this weird thing? The keyboard and the telly on top. And I had a look, and there was a dude sitting in front of it, and he was playing a game. And I'm like, how come you can play a game on this thing? What's going on here? And he said, you can type it in using something called BASIC. And I'm like, what, you can type it in? You can actually make a game yourself by typing on a keyboard with a little telly on top? And I'm like, wow, I can be a wizard? So yeah, that's where it all started. There were like 5 nerds, computer nerds in the whole sixth form college. Nobody knew what the hell we were doing. We would just closet ourselves away and hack on that computer every spare moment we had. We taught ourselves BASIC, and then when that was too slow, we taught ourselves 6502 machine code. We started writing games with that.
Can I just ask a quick question? In the film, in the interview, you mentioned the name of the guy that told you about machine code.
Yeah. Ruptured Rawlinson.
I love that name.
We used to call him Rupp. Yeah, he was a nice guy. He'd had some previous experience at his secondary school, which was a bit posher than mine. And they had a research machine 380Z, and he'd been hacking on that. So
right.
He taught me the first steps into machine code. And yeah, we made games for each other. I actually got into trouble at one point because in the room where the Commodore PET was, we all started writing our high scores on the walls. They didn't like that. We had to repaint the walls. And so I spent 2 years there on messing about on that computer, and at that time we taught ourselves, how games worked. And we started to develop the skill of making them efficiently, making them in machine code so we could get more action on the screen, and actually starting to get the glimmer of the feel of a decent game. I mean, that's a thing which takes time to develop, and these were the very, very early steps. But after 2 years, there was still nobody else around. It was just us, 4 or 5 nerds, because nobody else had computers at that point. The home computer market in the UK hadn't really woken up, it hadn't begun. That was 1978, 79, around that time. And so nobody else was really interested in what we were doing. We were just doing it for our own pleasure, and nobody had any idea what we were up to. And so there was no market for games. I never thought I'd be able to sell these things. They were just things which I made with my mates and for my mates, And as far as arcade games and console games were, I knew of the Atari at that point. I desperately lusted after an Atari, but I couldn't afford one. We knew there was a shop I used to go around to and just like hang around in the shop like a bad smell, playing all the latest Atari games, But those games might still have been made by wizards, even though we knew there was code in there somewhere. We didn't know what development system you would use, how you'd be able to get your hands on anything like that. And so we had this new skill set we were developing, but we didn't see it having any actual use in life. We thought it was just literally something we were doing for our own pleasure, and that was all it would ever be. In the US, of course, you had the Holy Trinity. You had the PET and the Apple II. The Apple II was expensive. I mean, in the UK, the Apple II was like, you're looking north of like £1,000 for a decent system. And that's £1,000 back then, which is a lot more money now. There was one PET in our entire school, and that was like £700 to buy. And there's no way I could afford that as a school kid, The TRS-80, the Trash 80, was it was cheaper, but it wasn't as good as the PET, in my humble opinion. And it was still £400. It was still way north of anything I could afford. And so the Trinity didn't really start the UK home computer industry at all. There were instances of it here and there, but they were all basically business computers or used if you were lucky, in your school. And then this guy came along. Now everybody calls him Uncle Clive because he just gave everybody so much pleasure and fun with the things he made. The first one, the Sinclair ZX80, was very weird. It could run code or display a screen, but not both at the same time. So
The screen would glitch wildly.
yeah. Every time you touched the key, the whole screen would go. It was very weird, but I loved it. It was cheap as chips. Yeah, it was £100. That was something I could think. Well, yeah, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get an evening job, and I'm going to save up and buy one of them, and I did. And all the sort of deep nerds like me piled on this thing and bought it.
Well, because it was kit, right?
Well, yeah, you could get it as a kit for $79.99, I think, but I was far too much of a klutz to build a kit. I'm sure I would have broken it, so I bought one ready-made. And it was still a bit too weird for non-nerds to be interested in, because it didn't have sort of really good games in it because of this thing with the display. I mean, people did work around that later on when they got to know the machine a bit better, but at first, it had this flashing display, and you couldn't really do what looked like a proper game on it. So next year, he did it again. And basically, he came out with another machine, the ZX81, that was better and cheaper. It was only £80, like $79.99. And this could actually display and compute at the same time, which is an advantage if you're trying to write a game. And it was, like I say, slightly less weird.
I think that machine was sold as a Timex over here.
Yeah, the Timex Sinclair 1000, I think, was it? Yeah. It was just about good enough to play games that were recognisably video games. And now non-nerds started to get interested. Huh? They saw their friends playing recognisably video games on this weird thing, and they were like, hello. And some of them bought these things. And that was the very breaking of the dawn of the UK home computer industry. Now, the main differences between the US and the UK games industry at that time, in the US, the lower end would have been primarily console-based. You had your Atari, you had your Intellivision, ColecoVision, that kind of stuff. Mostly Atari. And the higher end was the aforementioned Trinity. And quite often they were matured, they had like more memory, like 48K of memory on the Apple II, that kind of stuff. Most of them had disk drives. You didn't really mess around with tape decks that much. And the primary medium for computer software was disk. But in the UK, the lower end was primarily computer-based. So we had the VIC-20, we had the Sinclair Spectrum, there's that man again. The Commodore 64, may it be eternally blessed. But yeah, it matured into mostly Spectrum and C64. There were other machines, but they were basically scum. And then on the higher end, you had consoles. It was high end to us because the price to own them was roughly the same as the computers, but the software, being on cartridges, was a lot more expensive. So it was much easier to pirate tapes. So tape was the preferred medium in the UK.
Why is it a Welsh tape?
Because Wales is lovely. Wales has, I believe, the highest sheep density in the entire world. What's not to love? So in the UK, nobody had a disk drive, at least until the 16-bit era, because the disk drive cost as much as the computer. I mean, in the case of the Commodore, they actually had a faster processor than the computer, I think. Us devs did get them eventually, but like when I made this, Gridrunner, it's one of the, if you're really old, you might have heard of that one that came out on the VIC-20 and Commodore 64 over here. If you're bloody old. I made that entirely on an unexpanded VIC-20 using a tape deck.
That game was like when your parents started to realise you were onto something now.
I made it in a week. I think they realised things were heading in an unexpected direction when I went to one of the Commodore shows at the Novotel in London. I had my really crappy version of Defender there. And we sold out of that, and then this American guy came up to me, all done up in a suit, and says, would you be interested in putting that on a ROM for us? And I had no idea how to do that, but I said, yes, of course I will. And I brought him back to my parents' place. My parents were utterly shocked to see this business guy coming in, talking about how much money I was going to make out of this game. I'm like, what? So yeah, I think they started to realise then that I wasn't just dicking about. So in the UK, our games loaded more slowly than in the US. The tapes were cheaper to produce, which meant that small companies like Llamasoft could actually participate. We weren't locked out by not being able to manufacture cartridges. We could just, there were tape duplication houses already set up for duplicating music tapes, and so they were adaptable to doing cassette tapes for games tapes as well. And it led to a wildly creative era. It's actually one of my favourite periods of my entire career, where basically small companies and individuals could have a significant impact on the actual software scene of the day. And what was nice about it is that the kids were they almost looked up to us like rock stars, But what was nice about it was that it was always accessible to everybody. They could look and see that the guys who were making these games were just dudes like them. Just guys at home with a home computer. You could learn how to code. So a bunch of them decided to do it for themselves, and they all joined in, and that was really nice and inclusive. And it was a wonderful era.
Can I ask a quick question? Because you're talking about kids appreciating it as rock stars, and it's a little. The context is magazines. Because there was some. Can you talk about how the computer game magazines factored into this whole big picture, like listings and stuff like that? Your first gig.
Yeah, I mean, we had loads of home computer magazine publications, and people would send in programs to get printed. It would be printed in the magazines, and people would sit there and type these things in. We were talking, hundreds of lines of code. People would be very dedicated to do that. But in doing so, a lot of them would make a mistake, and then in order to fix the mistake, they would learn a bit more about how the code worked. Or they'd take it and, change all the camels to bouncing penises or something. I've seen that done. But in doing this, they were learning too. So the nice thing about the market being based on the home computer was that it was inclusive. Everybody could join in. A lot of these guys went on to be the foundation of the UK software industry later on down the line. It was a tremendous influx of talent to the UK software scene. Also, we enjoyed the benefits of piracy. I know it sounds silly, but actually piracy was a really good thing for us, because all the kids wanted to have the same machines that their mates had, so that they could all pirate tapes back and forth to school. But that also meant that there were a lot of Spectrums and Commodores in kids' hands. It's wildly popular, these machines. And so there were more sales of legit software as well. So actually, having them swap tapes didn't really hurt us in any way. It actually made more people own computers. And a lot of the kids, some of them turned hackers. Some of them were cracking these games and putting them on disk. And again, some of them developed tremendous skills in doing that. It also led to the birth of the demo scene, which is a whole other thing, which is a fantastic thing. If you've never seen the demo scene, you need to check out the demo scene and see what people are still doing with these machines to this day, because it is extraordinary. And so, as a result of this, we never had a video game crash. While everything was in flames over here, back there, we were happy as Larry, all working on our stuff on our home computers, and it was a vibrant and creative and a lucrative scene. There was money to be made in this. For somebody like me, who only a couple of years previously had wondered if these skills I was learning would ever be any use to get at all, this was remarkable and fantastic, and I absolutely enjoyed it so much. And we used to go to computer exhibitions. I'd do like 3 or 4 a year, and people would come up. They got to recognise the Llamasoft stand. We would have a hard sell. We'd put the games out the front. I'd go and stand out the front, and they could all come and play games with me and chat to me. We'd play music all the time. We'd look after people's bags. My mum would make people cups of tea. It was just a really, really nice social scene.
It was a family affair too. Like you would have your brothers would help you set up the stand, and
everybody pitched in. I mean, my mum, bless her, she ran all the business side of things because she was good at that, and I absolutely wasn't. and that left me just to be able to sit there and literally hack out code all day. And then when it came to do the exhibitions, my brothers would come up and help. My dad would come up and help, and would drive us up and down and come up and help set up the stand. And yeah, everybody enjoyed it. My parents always said that Llamasoft really enriched their lives, and I was so grateful for their participation. Sorry, I get a little bit emotional when I think of what they did for me. Excuse me. Anyway, so yeah, even small outfits like us could survive. And it developed a whole bunch of talent, which then went on to form the basis of the more commercial version of the software industry which emerged. I mean, eventually the money men moved in, the market matured, and yeah, it went away from being just us guys in our bedrooms on our home computers, and it got more serious. But like I said, I'm stubborn, I never stopped.
And it was like the rise of the consoles in the UK that sort of precipitated that, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, consoles did start to take off more in the UK. I mean, there was still the Amiga scene, which overlapped with it. There was still the 16-bit scene going on. But yeah, which one? I've got it in my head. Obviously, there was the NES and the SNES and the Master System. The Master System, the Sega Master System, was very popular in the UK. There were a bunch of us who are well known and prolific in that sort of emerging scene on our side of the pond. And there's a lot of stuff we did which never actually made it over here because you didn't have the same kind of computer scene that we had. And what you'll see in the Llamasoft collection is a bunch of my work that covers that entire period. I mean, there's the real early stuff in there as well. Actually, I mean, I love the collection, but it can be. It's almost a bit embarrassing because you get to see my really early, really crappy stuff. And I hope you see it evolve into something better. But it's a lovely collection. I was amazed that they were going to do that for me. I'd seen the Atari 51 and how fantastic that was. And so the idea of them doing a Llamasoft one just absolutely blew me away. It was absolutely lovely, and they've made a beautiful job of it. And there's loads of contextual stuff there. There's stuff in the magazines. The magazines, as you were saying earlier on, were so important. There were a couple of major magazines. I mean, Zap 64 comes to mind, where they would invite us programmers up, and we'd have high score competitions, and they'd do interviews, and I got to meet all kinds of other cool guys there. I mean, Tony Crowder and Matthew Smith and Andy Braybrook. These were household names in the UK. Absolutely fantastic guys, and they were all, to a man, absolutely lovely to hang out with. I mean, there was no kind of real feeling of we were competing against each other. It's just we were the lucky nerds who were there having all this fun. It was fantastic. And so this is the kind of thing that people might remember me for in the US. There's Gridrunner and Tempest 2000 in the UK. Then there's all this kind of stuff. There's lots of camels, of course, and llamas, and beasties. I've been quite prolific. This is just a tiny. There's absolutely crap loads of stuff. You probably might have had Llamasoft software without even realising. The Xbox 360 music visualizer was made by Llamasoft, and of course the one in the Jaguar CD-ROM, which hardly anybody ever bought. We made a bit more penetration with the Xbox 360. And that thing about the llama's arse. It's me. It is totally me. They came up to me at an exhibition. I can't remember, 94 around that time, and they said, this guy came up to me and said, I hope you don't mind. We've borrowed half your techniques for our visualizer. And I'm like, okay. And then when it came out, it had the really whips the llama's arse. I think they were trying to say their visualizer was better than mine. I mean, to be fair, it was more advanced than the one I did in the Jaguar, but it was like a couple of years later. But yeah, that's my bloody fault. There's a whole bunch of other stuff which I've been doing, which Paul obviously has been talking more about. I was always been very interested in visualization stuff to perform graphics to music. I always wanted an instrument to be able to do that, and I've been developing it across the years. Started out with psychedelia, that was in 1984, I think I did that, and then went on to 16-bit versions. I did a thing called Tripotron, which took me a year to write. The manual alone took me a month to write, had its own parallel programming language in it. I mean, probably only about 6 people bought it, but it was good, you know. And I'm still developing them now. I've got a new light synth on the go, which is going to form the basis of everything I'm doing moving forward, and hopefully I'm going to be doing Space Giraffe 2 using that. Yes. The Space Giraffe 2 has got to be made.
Well, quickly, the innovation though, like, so the early ones were like they were manual, your music would play, it didn't even respond to the music, and you're still like moving a joystick or controller. But then Neon changed that.
Yeah, I mean, basically, I've always wanted them to be performance instruments. I've wanted them to be things which you actually interact with according to the music, and you put your expression into the synth yourself. Visualizers are okay. The one I made for the Xbox 360 is a full visualizer, but you can still use it as an interactive light synth as well. You can plug 4 controllers into it and use it as a light synth. And to me, that's where my main interest lies. And I think the interest in visualizers has died down a bit now. And I think part of the reason for that is that they are basically passive things. You put it on, it does its thing, but you don't interact with it. And it feels quite different, especially with the multiplayer one which I made. It feels very different when there's a bunch of you working together to create these visuals and you're actually doing things yourself. And you can put your own expression into it. One thing we did, we got invited to do the visuals at a rave put on by Warp Records, that's an EDM music label in the UK. There were 2 visuals crew there. There was us and one other lot, and the other lot packed up halfway through the night and said, look, we can't compete with what you're doing. And what we did, we had 4, at that time it was based on the GameCube, we had 4 Wavebird wireless controllers. And we just took them out into the dance floor and handed them out to people and said, look, take this, waggle those sticks, press those buttons and watch over there and see what happens. And so people were actually making the visuals themselves, and they absolutely loved it.
That's how Rick was chatting up girls, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, that's Rick, isn't it? So yeah, basically, I'm just old and stubborn, and I'm still here. I made a bunch of stuff in the early industry, which was quite a different place than the US. And if you have an interest in seeing what you know, that period of my career leading up to Tempest 2000, then definitely pick up that collection. It's so nicely done. And I'm not just trying to plug it because it's my stuff. It is genuinely a nice historical artifact. And if you're more interested in the visual side of things, then obviously Paul's film is the thing to look for. I'm looking forward to that coming out. I've seen the whole thing, and it's in a way it's quite weird to watch a film that's about me. I'm like, what the fuck? Excuse me. Sorry, but yeah, it's like wow. It's odd. Put it that way. It's odd, but yeah, it's odd in a very nice way. And the last thing I will plug is, I've been standing up here sounding like I'm all that. I'm just trying to explain a little bit of where I come from and the stuff we did. I am going to plug this though. I'm a long way from home, I'm out of my comfort zone, and what I generally like to do is hang out with my sheep and stay home working on the games, and occasionally go down the pub, and occasionally eat some curry. Well, quite frequently eat some curry actually. So I'm going to finish off by writing the Llamasoft YouTube. It's not monetized, so don't worry. I'm not trying to get money out of you. It's all free. We do every single day. We do like a 10-minute video of morning sheep time, and what that is us going out and feeding digested biscuits to 5 sheep, a very old llama, and a grumpy donkey, and they get biscuits and cuddles every morning. So if you fancy just a bit of chill out, bit of peace, check it out. Just search for morning sheep time and you'll find it. And well, that's it. That's who I am.
Round of applause, please.
Thank you.
I would love to throw this out to the floor for questions. Do we have a microphone, or do you want to take this one?
Jeff, thank you for all of the games over the years. I've just loved your work. What is the strangest video game computer? Sorry, what's the strangest home computer video game you've played, maybe outside of yourself, your own?
I think one of the ones that I really loved in the early days of the Amiga, there was a game called Mind Walker. And it was really unusual with this quite cool generative music, and you were going around this like 3D landscape, and you had to collect like fragments of things and go down tunnels into this area with lots of cells that was meant to represent your brain, and there was always squishy noises, and it made me think that okay, in the 16-bit era we could start to do some really different stuff, and it really impressed me. So yeah, Mind Walker, I would say. If you've never seen it, check it out on an emulator because it's really, really good.
Thank you very much. So it blew my mind that the llama whips the llama's ass, the Winamp. But what about Milk Drop, the visualizer?
Yeah, I mean, Milk Drop was of the same kind of era. I mean, it was doing very similar things to what I think we all got into various kinds of feedback to generate the visuals. It was really nice. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, to this day I use it for everything, and I still hit the H key, which is the hard reset on the visualizer. And I give everything a ranking. So I've got
you actually do interact with it then?
Absolutely, I do. Thank you.
I wanted to ask about Psychedelia. I have an MSX machine at home, and I'm trying to find a copy of it. I've been looking for it forever. Is there any way I can obtain it?
I don't know. I can ask. I was in Barcelona a couple of months ago. I know there's a big MSX scene out there. I could try asking one of the guys out there to see if they could source a copy of it. I don't know. I'll have a look when I get home. I've got a stash of some old tapes somewhere, including old versions of Psychedelia. I'll have a look at it. If I can find one, then I'll give you one. But I'll have to have a look. Failing that, I'll ask the guys in Spain if they can find one.
I'm more than happy to pay for it. I'll leave a card with you before I leave.
Okay, yeah. If you do that, then I'll see what I can do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've often wondered what was the origin and obsession with yaks, llamas, camels, and various other animals.
I don't know. I've just always been into beasties. I mean, when I was before I got into games or anything, I was notorious at school for being into camels. You know, I just loved camels. I remember there was a friend of mine I used to go and stay with, and his mum got to know me fairly well, and she said. In later years, she said she saw this game come out called Attack of the Mutant Camels. She said, that must be Jeff. I've just always liked these beasties, and it made the games distinctive. In a way, it kind of marked a transition, because prior to that, I've been doing a lot of copying arcade games. And then when I did Attack of the Mutant Camels, and it was basically just Parker Brothers' Empire Strikes Back with giant camels in, and people really liked it. And I'm like, I can do that. I'm going to do more of that. And I think it served me fairly well. It made my games quite distinctive. If there were big beasties in it, it was mine, you know.
I don't know if this is a question, but I just wanted to thank you. I was 15 and I started my first mobile game publishing company because I played Tempest 2000 and looked up what you did, and I got started, and we did some pretty crazy stuff, and really it's because you kind of inspired me with that and kind of everything you did. So I wouldn't be here career-wise if you hadn't done that. So thank you.
Thank you. That is absolutely my favourite kind of thing to hear, that somebody's actually been interested by what I've done and then been moved to get into the business themselves and make their own games. That's fantastic. I'm so glad that happened, you know.
We had a chance to talk a little bit yesterday, and about Eugene Jarvis and what you like about his games. What other game developers were a big influence to what you did, and you either tried to mimic or you really enjoyed their content?
Well, I mean, obviously I'd have to name Dave Toira, because I always liked his designs. Tempest to me was like a revelation. And I like the other stuff he's worked on as well. Yeah, maybe I'll get to do some more work on another one of his designs, who knows. People like, yeah, that would be fun. What? Oh.
Fire alarm.
Ed Log, Carol Shaw, you know. Thank you for coming. Sorry it had to end like that.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and here are a few more videos for you to check out.